gets worked out.
Okay. A lot of what you guys have been saying, and particularly Dr. Clayton as well, remind me of a quick story I want to recall. Taught 7th through 12th grade the last 2 years. I had a 7th grader student ask on the topic of ecology, Mr. Davis, will God send us to hell if we don't take care of the environment? My response was, witty, I think. If you don't take care of the environment, God won't send you to hell because hell will come to you. So, in other words, how we think about God, it's instrumental in our theology, makes a difference practically in how we live it out. So today, we're going to talk just briefly on a vision called Panentheism. It's a vision that has been sort of hovering on the edges of a lot of our discourse. It's sort of coming in and out of the classroom. Not to be really surprising because our professor is one of the foremost advocates of this position in recent decades. So it's a word made of 3 Greek words, pan, meaning all, in, meaning in, and theism, meaning God. And what it denotes really is that all or everything in God-ism, right? Sometimes the isms aren't popular, so feel free to take that out if you'd like to. But often a lot of people find the word helpful in terms of the distinguishing factor that is located with this word in that it's not pantheism, which focuses on the radical immanence of God and thus God's pure identification with the natural world itself, nor is it theism, which wants to sort of disassociate God from the world with the radical transcendent, or what we say here is an out-there-ness. Rather, what can be said, at least to some respects, is that panentheism wants to hold on to the insights, the strongest insights of both these positions. And I think Elizabeth Johnson's definition here is probably one of the best. So, taking the sort of image above, if theism weighs the scales in the direction of divine transcendence, namely 1 on the left, and panentheism overmuch in the direction of immanence, namely 7 on the right, then panentheism attempts to hold on to both in full strength. We won't have time to go through all the quotes, but this is probably one of the best quotes that I've found when it talks about the sort of confluence of, and not opposition of, both immanence and transcendence in panentheism. Another sort of visual for us, so God and for theism, God and the world are separate, even if there is a line connecting them. I don't know if you can quite make that out. Pantheism, the universe equals God, and panentheism wants to say that the universe is within the divine life, and the divine is in the universe, although the divine cannot be reduced to the universe itself. Actually, this quote here at the bottom is taken directly from the glossary in our readings, which was a quick passage. Now, the panentheistic analogy. There's been a lot of analogies, obviously, to help us think about what is God's relationship to the world. And what Dr. Clayton has dubbed the panentheistic analogy is this analogy of the mind-body relationship in human beings in relation to the divine-world relationship on a sort of cosmic scale, right? We won't read all this, but what it really emphasizes is that intimacy, right? You feel your body, right? And God feels the world with the same sort of immediacy the world feels itself, this deeply sort of intimate and related sort of portrait, to the extent that God is said to be the soul of the world, or the body, or the world to be the body of God, like a lot of eco-feminist thinkers have said, in a deeply sort of ecological view in that sense. So how do we think about the world ecologically if it's God's body we're dealing with, right? And so maybe the Ganges River doesn't look the way it did, right? Makes a difference. Quickly, another analogy that's often used, an infant in a mother's womb. And I particularly like this one, because there's a sense in which the infant is literally within the mother, right? And a strong sense in which the mother is in the infant, right? So the reality of the mother is immanent for the infant, although the mother transcends and is distinct from the infant, okay? PowerPoint technology. Okay, a few panentheistic themes that help us measure whether a position might be considered panentheistic or not. As we've seen, cosmos is God's body, right? A mind-body relationship, God-cosmos relationship. Language of in and through. Okay, that divine action happens in and through the created reality, in and through the cosmos itself and creatures. Cosmos as a sacrament. Think of the ecological undertones here. Okay, something under, in, and through which the divine presence is made known. Okay, language of inextricable intertwining. God, cosmos, deeply relational, although they are distinct, right? Most panentheists will say that. God's dependence on the cosmos, because there's a sense in which on panentheistic models, the cosmos is of intrinsic value. It's needed in order to actualize the divine aims, right? It's not something that should be tossed off and be left behind, as the popular novel likes to say. Okay, intrinsic positive value of the cosmos. And one way we might say is God is good, so God's body is good, right? Your body is good. How do you treat your own body? How do we treat the earth? It raises these sorts of questions. And passibility, another one, that authentic love suffers with the blood. You suffer when your body suffers. God suffers when the earth suffers. So what sort of practical implications does that have? Okay, a number of thinkers have spoken about the panentheistic turn. Actually, that's something Dr. Clayton has coined as well. Hiram, if I could call you out, can you read David Ray Griffin's quote there?
All right. Although people have often been led to believe that they must choose from among only three options, traditional theism, pantheism, and atheism, there is a fully distinct fourth alternative, panentheism, which an increasing number of thinkers are finding more satisfactory.
Okay, so this is a sort of turn that's happening, the panentheistic turn. Griffin has henceforth called it a postmodern revelation. British theologian Michael Brearley has called it a silent revolution. Okay, what are some reasons, just briefly? And these also have been identified by our professor. Okay, there's a ton of perceived inadequacies of classical theism. We could spend a lot of time on this. We'll briefly, we'll just jump over it because I think a lot of us know some of those. Panentheists say that panentheism is more compatible with insights across scientific disciplines. Okay, that panentheism is presupposed by certain metaphysical convictions. Right, process theology would be one. German idealism might also be one. Okay, more adequate preservation of certain religious beliefs, whether that's revelation or incarnation. Right, I want to say that panentheism is an incarnational view, fundamentally, of the God-cosmos relationship. 5, a mediating metaphysic between East and West. That could be particularly helpful in thinking about religious pluralism, the role of God in the other, that God is fundamentally within cultures and religions working. Okay, religiously more viable, again, a number of things we could point to. And 7, better ethical or political implications. Okay, ecological is a huge one here, right? And also that is a sort of democratic, Matthew Fox calls it a democratic view of God, because God is everybody's and not just one sort of group. 2 volunteers. Rachel, would you mind reading Dr. Clayton's quote up there?
Perhaps the best case for panentheism, then, would be a cumulative one, because there are so many difficulties and dissatisfactions with classical theism today, and because panentheism offers a more attractive response to various theological, philosophical, ethical, socio-political difficulties, and provides the more compelling overall model of the God-world relation.
John, would you mind reading that next one too?
God is the encompassing spirit. We and everything that is are in God. For this concept of God is not supernatural being separate from the universe. Rather, God, the sacred spirit, is a non-material layer or level or dimension of reality all around us. God is more than the universe, yet the universe is in God. Thus,
in a spatial sense.
Okay, God is not somewhere else, but right here. I will call this conception of God panentheism.
Okay, so two of the foremost advocates of the position. And then lastly, as Dr. Clayton brought up, we're editing a really fantastic volume coming out. And what this wants to do is sort of situate the panentheistic turn within the context of personal, spiritual, and theological journeys with a few thinkers who are going to be coming. And hopefully maybe in a year we'll have it out. So I hope you guys would take interest. And finally, just to end, a few more resources. If you're interested, and this will go up on the website for further reference. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. I'd like to take just a minute, if you'll stay up front,
Sure.
to answer some questions, hear some responses.
Sure.
They don't have to be questions, they can be criticism.
Okay, this is a question.
Okay.
First of all, it was a very attractive presentation. So, but I think my questions are, I see classical theism as supporting the universe or whatever, all that exists is in God, but also that He created the universe.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my understanding of most panentheists, or many, is they don't believe God created the universe.
Especially out of nothing.
Yeah.
Right, so particularly I think you'd be speaking about process thought, right? Which in some sense wants to say there's always been a world, not like our world, but a world in some respect, some sort of finitude that God has always eternally coexisted with. So that would be an extreme I think that process would go to. So Dr. Clinton, I think your position would be different from that.
I do
As
affirm
much-
creation, in fact, creation ex nihilo. We just published a book where a number of thinkers were attacking the idea that God created a universe out of nothing, like Catherine Keller, and 4 of us were defending the idea that God could create a universe out of nothing.
Right.
So I actually think that one can be Orthodox Christian, Orthodox Muslim, or true believing Muslim, Jewish, and hold panentheism. I don't think it's a opposition.
Okay, I understand that, but because it's association with so many people that.
Oh, at the master's and doctoral level, we don't do association. We say, what is Clayton hold?
That's what you're saying, but if John Cobb or Catherine Keller define panentheism.
We don't do association. We analyze, we subdivide, and we say, it turns out there are three major schools in panentheism. And two hold a contra-Christian position, and Clayton holds a thoroughly Orthodox position.
And I think that's one thing I maybe didn't make as clear is that panentheism should be seen as this type of umbrella term, right? So under panentheism, there's a variety of positions.
7, you said.
Well,
And if we had an hour, you and I could do the 7.
Indeed.
Right.
So Aquinas might be a classical panentheist in the sense that, in some sense, God is the ground of all being, and that the world is included, although God remains unchanged, God remains...
But Anselm Min, the best Thomas scholar in Claremont, thinks that panentheism, that Thomas is panentheistic.
Right, well, that's what I said. I think so, too. Classical panentheism.
By the definition, would you say that St. Thomas is? You can say no.
I would think he had to.
Yes! I mean, thank you for your answer. All right, other questions?
Yeah.
I'm going to piggyback on that, just comment on Aquinas being a classical panentheist. Out of the people that you've researched for this book, and I guess your own studies of panentheism, were you able to detect those that would be considered panentheist in the earlier stratas of Christian tradition as it was being formulated?
Yeah,
And so could you speak a little more about that?
Sure, great question. And of course, I'm still deeply involved in these studies, but what I will point to is that in the recent book put out by Dr. Clayton and Lorelei Bernanke, Panentheism Across the World's Traditions, Catherine Keller in that book has a wonderful chapter about panentheism in the sort of development of Christian thought. And one quote that she has is from Irenaeus, which is a really sort of beautiful quote. So what we're saying here is not something new, right? So that is often the idea. That panentheism is this new view. Well, there's actually panentheistic dimensions within the textures of all religious traditions to some respect, right? And so the panentheistic turn may be a time for us to reawaken some of those lost, more immanent notions of God that have always been, in some respects, on the fringes of our traditions. Yeah?
Is the panentheistic term mostly used within process thought, or is it something that's used in other religions?
Much more broadly. The claim is that after about 1829, when Krause introduced the term, that it's grown more and more influential in the Abrahamic family of traditions. And then we were able to show across 8 different religious traditions, or 9, I guess, including Michael Murphy, that there's a way of interpreting those traditions as panentheistic. They mean different things, it's really complex, but there's a fundamental similarity. There are some fundamental similarities.
Michael?
I was curious about if this turn occurred and panentheism, that sort of viewpoint, as differently expressed, took more of a foothold in theological world perspectives. What do you see as the ecological implications?
That's a great closing question.
Okay, great question. To have a divine reality that includes the world means that that world is inherently and intrinsically valuable, right? It can't not be. It's within the divine life. So in some sense, if we're a part of a divine reality that includes us, even though it can't be reduced to us or the world, that requires that we not only treat ourselves with, and others with respect, but also the earth, the reality we actually inhabit. So I would say it's an inherently ecological vision of God.
Which is why many of the ecological feminists have taken the term explicitly as part of the drink. Can you click out with that computer? That's perfect, and we'll click in with this one.